This is Gary Marr from Glen Ellyn Community College. This screen capture is from my SAS 150 AB online class. And in this screen capture, I'm going to show you an example which is similar to Assignment 9. Now, in Assignment 9, we're working with processing exceptions. Exceptions can happen two different ways. We can have an exception which is caused by a runtime error, divide by 0, trying to access a list element that's out of range, bad subscript. We can also create exceptions that would help us process different errors that could occur in our program. In this case, it could be something which, in the deposits program, something which is negative or a required field that's not there, etc. So what I've done in this is I've created this in pseudocode, and what it does, it has a bunch of classes. It's got a class called bad deposit, a class called bad check. Now these are custom exceptions that I create. They're not going to do anything. They're going to be used kind of like a flag that's raised if this particular error occurs. And then the try-catch code in my main program will actually handling the process of the error. The reason this particular technique is valuable is that the actual class could be used by a mobile app, a tablet, a phone, a PC, and the application when it actually runs in each one of those devices could be different. In other words, my PC screen is bigger than a watch, it's bigger than a tablet. So what I would do is I would write a program for a tablet, program for a cell phone, program for a PC. I would use this class, but when the exception was sent back to my try block, the message would relate to what that particular device could handle. It might be toast, where it pops up on a cell phone. It might be a dialog box on a PC. It might be something that goes across my screen on a tablet. So this is one way to extending the life of your classes so that it works on mobile phones, tablets, PCs. If I was a bank creating this application and I knew that people wanted to find their balance, I could pretty much expect today that people would be wanting to check their balances on multiple devices. This class, or these set of classes, would support that type of environment. So I've got one for deposit, one for check. I still have my person class, and I don't have date of birth anymore. I put serial number instead. It's got sets and gets for the parent. My parent's going to inherit person, my child checkbook's going to inherit person. It's going to have all of this stuff plus its own, and this should look familiar by now. There's my current balance calculation. This has got a little bit more robust error checking when it comes to the validation of sets because it's actually going to use those custom exceptions. So on this particular program, if the value is less than 0, it's going to do what's called raise that class object. That class object bad deposit is up here, so it is defined. So that program, so that statement will run correctly, okay? And then down here, it's also going to, if it has a bad check, raise the check object that I built, okay? Let's hold off for now for further discussion, but that's the end of the checkbook class. Now let's see how this is going to be utilized by my program. This program is a Python program, obviously, written for a PC. Probably wouldn't work in a watch. I'd have a different program for that. I've got some variables identify off the start here. They're just, I think, used within the program. I instantiate my checkbook object. Nothing fancy there. I collect a name from the screen. I set the name. Now, I'll do the same thing with, I can say hello name, okay? And then down here, inside a loop, okay, I'm going to go into this loop if the deposit is equal to X. Okay, so let's see, deposit must start off as an X, so just check, so it's a little sentinel value. It's going to come in now and process a try block. And a try catch or try except in the case of Python. Most languages would call these except options, but this is going to be, catch options, but this would be except in Python. So the try identifies statements that are listening for exceptions. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to send a deposit, okay, to set deposits. And if set deposits is bad, it's going to raise bad deposit. So what the try is supposed to do is listen for possible exceptions. So one of the exceptions is a value number. In other words, they gave me a letter, and I was expecting a number. But also one of the exceptions is bad deposit. So if that exception is raised, it looks for that in an except handler. There it is. It's going to print bad or invalid deposit and set in deposit to X. The X causes it to come back and ask me again for another deposit. So this is going to loop until it gets a valid deposit, one that's greater than 0 and not a letter. The same thing's going to happen with check. So you can see here what's happened is that the print or the actual error itself is controlled by the application. It's not controlled in the class. This way, a class could be used for a watch, a mobile phone, a tablet, or a PC, but the application that runs on it is probably different. I mean, I might have a Python application for, the PC. I might have a slightly different application, but maybe still Python written for the watch, but I'm probably not going to have a print. I'm going to have something different displayed on a watch versus a PC. So this is a much more flexible solution that takes advantage of reusable classes or reusable code. If we continue on here, okay, the same deal with a check. It's going to process bad check or an invalid value, and then the program, or excuse me, then a negative value, and then it's going to end the program. This is a more complete, this is probably outside of including abstract classes, which really aren't supported in Python. This is probably about as fancy as you're going to see in pseudocode, and especially for this class now. So this is your assignment 9. The last one's coming up. It's a lot more straightforward. There's very little coding involved with that. If you have any questions with this or from the other assignment from Chapter 8, which is also classes, please let me know.